Hello and welcome. This is Michele Christensen of One Noteworthy Life, and this is Come Back from Burnout Episode 3. Timestamps are below if you want to click around. Now, you may notice that this isn't my usual content. There won't be anything about OneNote or about getting things done or personal organization. This is talking about my recovery from a severe case of workplace burnout. And I'm not talking about YouTube burnout, which is a thing that happens, but it just didn't happen for me. I'm specifically talking about what is commonly called workplace burnout. So if this isn't your thing, feel free to click away and I'll see you on another video. But I really struggled when I was at the worst of my burnout to find easy to access and actionable information that I was able to do at the time. So my goal is really to just provide you with what I've learned along the way and give you steps that you can take even when your ability to do things to help yourself is really low. There's a playlist linked in the description of the whole series if you want to watch some other videos on burnout. And the things I'm telling you in this series and today are just things that I have personally experienced. I'm not an expert in this topic and I haven't done any studies or anything like that. So just to make sure that we are all on the same page, I want to go through the definition of burnout, and this is from the World Health Organization. Burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It's characterized by three dimensions, which are feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. In my case, the burnout was more about taking care of too much stuff in my personal life and home projects. I live in a fixer-upper house, so there's just always projects going on. But I definitely have all the symptoms of workplace burnout. So today's goal is I want to tell you what I did at the worst of my burnout, which is what I called my hibernation period. What I basically did was I stripped away everything that was not absolutely essential. I just gave away everything I could. I stopped doing everything I could and just kind of kept the minimum that I needed to do going. And I want to just be clear that I don't think this was a good thing to do. It was just the only thing I felt like I could do at the time. Like I was just so depleted. And when you get that depleted, I think this is the real danger of burnout, that what you need to do to help yourself, like take time off and do things like maybe go outdoors or go on a hiking trip or something like that, it becomes harder to even do those simple things. So I'm not saying it's a positive coping strategy, but it is what I did. And I just want to give you some details of that and some of the costs and benefits. So as I mentioned previously, burnout is really hard to address because the more depleted you are, the more burned out you are, the less able you are to do things to help yourself. So the things you need to do to help yourself, like take a vacation or whatever that is for you, it becomes harder and harder to actually do because for me, my energy was really low and so was my mental capacity. Not only was my energy low, it was also really unpredictable. Like I couldn't really tell how I was going to feel on a specific day. And just like the idea of planning something and being obligated to it was really hard, even if it was something I wanted to do. And so, yeah, that's just it, the things you need to do become more and more out of reach. Another problem that I had with addressing my burnout was that a lot of the ideas that I was coming across, a lot of the concepts and stuff were just way too abstract. They would say things like, oh, take some time off, meditate, do, or whatever. And it's like, no, I need like a specific, like how much time off, what kind of time off, et cetera, et cetera. And I just couldn't parse things through. Like I couldn't think things through, like, to figure out like what kind of vacation I wanted or what kind of outdoor activity I wanted. So it was just hard for me to handle those abstract ideas. The other thing is some of the ideas with burnout is are about walking away from a lot of your activities or your responsibilities. And I think most of us have at least some level of responsibility on a day-to-day basis that we just can't walk away from. So it's just not realistic to do certain things that were suggested when I was doing my research. So what I thought I needed was more time off, more time away from doing the things that were burning me out, and time doing different things that I normally do. But what I didn't know was what those things were or how to make them come about in my depleted state. And this is all kind of why recovering from burnout is hard. It's because you don't know what you need. And once you find out, you might only be able to do a little bit, or it might not be able to do that thing at all. What my hibernation looked like? Well, it wasn't a fun period of life, I will tell you that. So one of the first things I did was I lowered my sensory input. I am a super sensitive person. Like, I tend to notice just tons of things when I go out. I notice like what everybody's wearing and what people are talking about, and like changes that, to a street, like which different cars are parked there, and that kind of thing. And if you're not familiar with this idea of being like highly sensitive, I'll talk about it more in future videos because I think it did contribute to my burnout. But I am not saying I'm special by any means. What I've heard is about 20% of the population seems to be wired this way. But it was really important for my recovery, though, because lowering the amount of sensory input reduced my mental load. So because I'm so sensitive, things stress me out that maybe wouldn't bother other people, like any place that's like loud or crowded or has a lot of activities or requires me to do a lot of things at once. So a few ways I did this. One is I avoided loud and crowded places. I avoided places with multiple sound systems. I noticed that a lot of like festival type things or outdoor street events have different sound stages, and so you can hear all these different sound systems at once. And I didn't like that. If I was going to hear music, I just want to hear one source of music. I also stopped going to some of the more busy stores that I would have shopped at, like Costco, and like we have an extremely busy Whole Foods near us, and so I just couldn't go. I just couldn't handle being in that environment. Another thing I did was I let go of following a lot of current events, and this is not a novel idea. I didn't, this isn't brilliant or original, but a lot of things come up on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, and I picked and chose which things I was going to follow and which ones I wasn't, and I just like let myself not know about certain things. And an example of this is back in 2023, if you remember the Titan submersible. It was like a private submarine that sank. And I just thought that that story was too traumatic for me at the time, too sad, too upsetting, and I just opted not to follow it. And for that one, I think that was mainly of interest because everybody was talking about it. So there's a temptation because you don't want to be the only one in the room not knowing this current event. But it doesn't really have any bearing on me. So there wasn't really any reason that I needed to follow it. Whereas some of the other things, like having to do with things I might vote on or people I might vote for, those I think are more important for me to follow. So another thing I tried to do was just move more slowly, doing less and moving slower, both physically and mentally as I did them. So instead of doing like all my errands in one day, which makes a lot of sense from an efficiency perspective, I would do just one. And another example of doing things slowly is my wardrobe was literally falling apart. I was wearing stuff with holes in it. And even so, I still replaced my clothes really slowly because I just couldn't handle trying to take on a big project. So I just did like one thing at a time. I would get like one t-shirt, try it on, make sure it fit, washed it, put it away, get rid of one that was falling apart, and then do that again. Another thing I did was try to have a small list every day of things that absolutely had to be done. Like, instead of thinking about what would be optimal or a wish list or what I would really like to get done, I would just pick a small list of things that had to be done. If I finished that, then I could go and say, well, what else might I like to do today? I also limited my social and recreational activities. Even though these things are fun, I found that they were consuming a lot of energy just because of how depleted I was. And this absolutely had a cost. It really damaged a lot of my social relationships, which I'm still working to rebuild, and I don't recommend it. I think ideally the best thing to do would be to avoid getting burned out in the first place, but I did do that. I also slept a lot. And I mean a lot, like sometimes 12 hours or more. And I've always been a sleeper, even since I was a baby. My parents would talk about how I slept so much even as a baby. So sleep for me is like a big thing. And I think it helps me to sort of re-energize my brain. Like it's like all that stuff that is being processed kind of cleans out at night while I sleep. Stayed home a lot. It's just easier to stay home and do quiet things, and it didn't require any planning or anything like that. So I did stay home a lot and did more quiet activities that were kind of slow paced. And then when I did go out, I tried to do more quiet and slow things like walking or riding my bike. And I do like to go to the gym or fitness studios for workouts. But I tried to stay away from things that were too loud, too fast paced, or had too much happening at the event. I also tried to avoid time commitments to the degree I was able to. I would decide on things last minute and let people know that I couldn't reliably honor my commitments, so I tried not to make them where I could. My personal value is that it's better to just not make a commitment or let the person know that you can't commit to that than it is to commit to something and not show up. I also relied on delivery as much as possible at that time. So I did all this for probably about 6 months, and then I gradually began to feel some improvement from my burnout, and I very slowly started adding things back. Um, and again, I don't think this is a good idea. It was more like this is all I could do at the time. The lesson would be to not let your burnout get so bad. So after about 6 months, I felt ready to slowly start adding things back. I began to address some medical issues that had been harboring, that had been happening over the years prior. Um, and this is why in my very first video, I suggested that you go for a checkup, because there are medical conditions that may not be apparent to you that could be causing or contributing to your symptoms. In my case, I had a surgery on my nose to correct a deviated septum, which was interfering with my breathing. And once I had that done and I healed up from it, the difference was incredible. It was so amazing how much better my breathing is and how much better able to work out and just, sleep better, and everything just feels so much better. I can breathe and get air into me so much easier. So I addressed that and a couple of other medical issues. I began doing some very low effort social activities a few times a month. And that's going to look different for different people, but like we have family in the area, and when we go visit our family, like I can be like very like low effort with that. Like we can just kind of hang out and talk and go for walks and that kind of thing. Like I don't really need to get dressed up or manage any time schedule or anything like that. So that's an example of a low effort social activity. I also began to gradually do some overdue home improvements and repairs, and that's been nice because it's one of those things that kind of builds on itself. Like the burnout gets bad, so you fall behind on home improvements and repairs, and then you feel worse, so you fall more behind. But when you can start to reverse that, it starts to spiral upward, which is nice as well. I began to gradually increase my general life activity, and this is kind of hard to quantify, but for example, I went to the physical grocery store as opposed to getting deliveries maybe once a month for that 6 months of hibernation. And gradually I started to increase that to a little bit more. So it was maybe I'd go like once a week at that point. And then just gradually began to do more of these low effort social events, more low effort outings, like things I can just walk to or things that aren't time dependent, that you could just go and walk around. And I've also been a little bit more willing to honor time commitments and able to honor time commitments. So I've been gradually making more set plans that require me to, honor a time commitment. So I've mentioned this a couple times, but there was absolutely a cost to getting this burned out and then feeling the need to go through this hibernation period. I messed up a lot of things. I was getting some physical therapy at the time, and I was so exhausted and so flummoxed and just unable to manage that I missed a bunch of appointments, and I ended up being put on a schedule where I could only schedule the day of. And that was a very real consequence that I sustained because of allowing my burnout to get this bad. My social relationships, friends and family, all of my relationships suffered because I just was so depleted. My YouTube channel and the general sort of business of One Noteworthy Life has suffered. And I'm not doing as much, but I am gradually increasing my efforts on that. And it does feel really good. It's something I really enjoy. And I get a lot of personal feelings of reward from when someone reaches out and says, hey, this was really helpful. The business of YouTube and content creation kind of grows slowly and steady with continuous work, but the drop off is much faster. So I definitely haven't gotten back to where I was before my hibernation, but things are improving. So my health and fitness did suffer. I just wasn't able to commit to, like, I really like going to fitness classes at a certain time with an instructor and a set workout. And I just wasn't able to do that as much, so I didn't work out as much in general, and so my fitness slid back. But again, I'm back to it. I'm getting on it. And the other thing is it gave me a really icky feeling of being unreliable. Like, I hate that. That's one of my most sort of treasured values about myself, is that, like, I'm trusty. I'm trustworthy. I'm tried and true. Like, I'm the friend that people ask to pick them up from surgery because I will absolutely be there if I say I will be there. And I really hated that time in my life when I was unreliable. So that's it. That is how I coped at my worst point of burnout, what it looked like, and what it cost me. What I've learned is that this recovery process is similar to fitness training in that at the start, I was only able to do very, very little to help myself along, to help in my recovery from burnout. But each time I did something, my capacity would expand a little bit. And it's a slow process, but it is kind of like an upward moving but jagged path. So I can't say that I recommend highlighting or hibernating to anyone, but it wasn't really a choice for me at the time. I really didn't know what else I could do. Um, what I do have more control over is not ever letting myself get that burned out again. And I have still a lot to learn about that. So look for future episodes. I'll be sharing more about my journey as it continues. Thank you so much for watching. And if this was useful to you in some way, I would love to have a thumbs up from you. And if you want more videos like this, as well as videos on OneNote, the Getting Things Done system, and personal organization, you can subscribe by hitting the subscribe button, and YouTube should notify you when I put new videos out. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye-bye.